It's now time for Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. It began as a podcast, went live on the net, and transformed into a full-blown empire. It's the only daily boxing talk show on the planet, hosted by the only guy with the balls to do it. Many have stepped into the ring. Many have tried to take the belt. And one by one, they've fallen. Another victim of the undisputed heavyweight champion of Boxing Talk Radio. Talkin' Boxing with Billy C is on now.
My style is impetuous, my defense is impregnable, and I'm just ferocious. I want your heart.
We're coming to you live from the Billy C Studios in Lake George, New York. I'm Bill Calagione. It's time for the Billy C Show. Good morning, good day, good evening. Whenever you're listening, whenever you're watching, hope you're doing okay today. Today's show is being brought to us in part by Sal's Neighborhood Pizzeria and Italian Restaurant located on beautiful St. Simons Island in Georgia. Check out the website, www.salsneighborhoodpizzeria.com, or give my man a call, 912-268-2328, 912-268-2328. Find out why we go all the way to St. Simons to get an authentic Italian meal. Trust me, if you're in the St. Simons area, don't forget to stop by Sal's. And speaking of St. Simons area, I want to give a special shout out to all of our Brunswick listeners on the radio dial, and if you guys haven't been over to Sal's, head over to Frederica on said St. Simon. I went to the Porky Pig School of Broadcasting. That's all, folks. Geez, I can't speak of the English today. Anyway, if you're in New Brunswick, man, just go over to Sal's. All right. Today's show is also being brought to us in part by, you guessed it, my book, Tom Molyneux, From Bondage to Baddest Man on the Planet, is available right now where all good books are sold. You can get a copy by visiting barnesandnoble.com or amazon.com. Get a copy today. You're looking to get a signed copy, don't worry about it. Visit our website, billycboxing.com, and click on the book. You can't miss it. And we just got a new shipment of books in. So if you want the signed copies, I know that there were several people that were waiting to get signed copies. They all went out. So everybody that's been waiting for a book, they've all been mailed. And I got a whole new shipment of them. So now's the time. Start thinking of the holidays. I hate to say it, but it's coming close. Anyway, coming up on the show today, we got Boxing Hall of Famer and New Jersey Boxing Commissioner Larry Hazard scheduled to join us. I got an email that was geared to him, so we'll give him the opportunity to respond to that, as well as some other issues I'm going to talk to him about. Also, today's that day again. It's Blast from the Past time, and Alex Papali will be joining us a little bit later. And today's Blast from the Past features former world champion and Boxing Hall of Famer Abe Attell. So Alex and I will tell you all about Abe. And also, we got a bunch of emails to read. Today's main topic, as we have a countdown to Triple G Canelo, which is a fight I'm totally looking forward to. In the meantime, it was announced that Anthony Joshua will be fighting Kubrat Pulev. We knew this fight was going to happen. It's taking place in Cardiff, Wales, on October 28th. As you recall, Kubrat Pulev was the mandatory for AJ as per defined by the IBF for quite some time. Pulev stepped away and let Joshua fight Klitschko, was also willing to wait his turn should Klitschko had made the decision to have the rematch, which he did not. So Anthony Joshua has to live up to his obligations and fight Pulev. My question is, will this fight go the distance? I don't think it's going to go the distance. I don't think it's going to go past 8 rounds. There is some other political issues going on concerning the other belt that Anthony Joshua holds, and that one is the WBA. And over the last several weeks, the WBA has listed Luis Ortiz as its mandatory and is threatening to strip Anthony Joshua of the WBA belt that he won, which was vacant on the line when he fought Klitschko, if he does not fight Luis Ortiz. But I have always said, especially in this particular case, that Anthony Joshua is better for the WBA than the WBA stripping him. Nonetheless, Pulev, AJ, October 28th. Will the fight go the distance? Joining me right now is my man, battling, getting ready for the storm down south, Sal, Rocky, Santa Cola. And Sal, my question to you, Anthony Joshua, Kubrat Pulev, October 28th, will this fight go the distance?
No, it will not go the distance. I definitely see Joshua probably in the probably by the 7th, 8th round, probably stopping Pulev, and that's how I see it. And of course, we saw some things with the Klitschko fight that Joshua, I'm sure, has been working on. One, his pacing himself and his conditioning, and being able to punch in combinations and sustain a level of conditioning that will get him into the later rounds. So I'm sure he's been working on that. But I don't see the fight going a distance. No way. And I see definitely Joshua ending the fight before the 10th round.
I agree with you. Anthony Joshua is the best heavyweight on the planet today. Kubrat Pulev, I've had the luxury of seeing him live. I had the, most people that haven't seen him, you get this, I believe it's a misconception of how big he is and how strong he is and everything else. He's not as big as you would think. I'm not a big guy, and I shook his hand. I was standing right next to him, and he's not as big as he looks. AJ is. In addition to that, Pulev is kind of slow. I don't see this fight. It's not going to make it to the 8th round. I do respect Pulev for being patient, and I do respect the IBF for making all the fights that mattered happen before they forced Anthony Joshua to fight this fight. I can't say the same for the WBA. Luis Ortiz was the interim champion, then he wasn't, then he was, and then all of a sudden they're ordering Klitschko to fight him, knowing that he had other obligations. We talked about this last time you were on, Sal, and I really believe that the WBA would make a huge mistake in stripping Anthony Joshua. I think they got to figure out a way to bide some time, let Anthony Joshua fill his mandatory with the IBF, then force him to fight whoever they see fit, in this case Luis Ortiz. Or there's a lot of rumor that Ortiz and Deontay Wilder might get it on. So what's your thoughts on the WBA possibly stripping Anthony Joshua? And one other thing, maybe Deontay Wilder's team would try to push to have them strip him so he would obtain the belt and have some more leverage when those two meet. So what's your thoughts on the WBA stripping AJ?
Well, there's the politics of boxing, and we could look at this two ways. But for a world sanctioning body organization to make concessions just for when it suits their needs, I have a hard time with that. The rules are the rules, so I'm a little bit looking at both sides of this fence. And the mandatories, they say every 6 months you got to defend your title against the number 1 ranked contender. Well, as you suggested, the IBF made some concessions or so to allow mandatories or fulfillments of other fights before they start their clock ticking. But on the other side of the fence, hey, a mandatory is a mandatory. If you're representing a world sanctioning body's role as a champion, 6 months you're supposed to defend against their number 1 ranked contender in the world. So, like I said, if they're going to make concessions, they lose some credibility, or they gotta make concessions where they do across the board. They can't do it just to suit their needs and then hardline on another level to do this. This should all be some kind of clause built into these sanctioning bodies to allow everybody to fulfill some obligations here and there, and then move forward. Either that, or they got to have one way to form one world sanctioning body, which will never happen, and just declare one champion per weight class. That would be a perfect story, but that ain't going to happen.
Well, it's interesting what you say, because half of what you said, the sanctioning bodies would be seeing. Yeah. It's like what Sal Rocky Senacola said. They have to fulfill their obligations, which I totally understand. You win a title. If you want to have any value, if the sanctioning body wants to have any value, they need to enforce their own rules and regulations, which I do agree with you on. However, in this particular case, because sanctioning bodies don't recognize another fighter that's got a title, okay? So in other words, like Anthony Joshua is nowhere in the that's not a good example. The WBC rankings. Anthony Joshua is nowhere there because he's got another title. So, if they're trying to tell me that Anthony Joshua is not, one of their, the way the WBC in this particular example sees him as one of the top 10 heavyweights in the world, well, how can you even suggest that? So with that said, the WBA saying, okay, well, we made Luis Ortiz our mandatory, so now you got to fight him. They're showing no respect for his other belt, the IBF. I just think that fighters, the bottom line here, we can go round and round, but the bottom line, Sal, is when a fighter reaches a certain plateau in terms of recognition and achievement, et cetera, I think it's more beneficial to a sanctioning body to work with them in order to allow them to meet their obligations with all of the other sanctioning bodies, and try to get it that way, because it's going to help them in the long run. The value of a fight between Anthony Joshua with multiple belts on the line, including a WBA belt, is way more valuable, in my opinion, than stripping him of the belt and then handing that belt to a winner of another fight. Don't you think?
Oh, I agree with you. And you just had my mind playing chess games here. When you say that the WBA did not recognize Anthony Joshua,
no, WBC, because
he's WBC. Okay,
that's sorry.
Because I got my P's and Q's. Well,
that's because
mixed up.
But that's because he's a champion in another division, another sanctioning body. So they won't even recognize a champion as a top 10 guy.
But that's unbelievable, because you know what? Here's where I was going. I think everybody should have a mandatory agreement that if there's a world sanctioning body that recognizes their world champion, they should automatically mandatories will force hell of a fight. Here we go. That's it. We won't have to wait. The round robin.
In and out. Yeah, well, it's not your fault. Well, maybe
it's the weather.
Maybe it is. I don't know. But the bottom line is Anthony Joshua. We both don't think Joshua Pulev will go the distance. One last thing before we take a break. Fight Chocolatito in the Inoue, Nao Inoue, who's a champion from Japan. He's on that card, and also Estrada is going against Kudras, which was a really close fight that Chocolatito had prior to losing his belt. What's your thoughts on the Chocolatito fight? Will he come out on top in the rematch?
Well, I like Chocolatito, and I think he definitely has this opportunity right before him, and I hope he does come out on top. I'm a little biased. Yes, I said it here. I like him. He's a great fighter, and I think he will. I think he will come out on top. And it'll be a great fight, as we expect from him. They're all great fights that he does. He's a champion at heart and champion in the ring. So it'll be a good, exciting fight, and I do expect him to win.
Yeah, I you know what? When I watched that fight live, I thought that Chocolatito lost. And then when I watched it again, I kind of changed my mind a little, and I thought it was an extremely close fight, but I thought he should have gotten the nod. And one of the issues that we had discussed, since the first fight, was the simple fact of were the judges influenced by the appearance of Chocolatito, because Roman Gonzalez was bleeding profusely, and it wasn't looking good, and I think it's human nature to think that the guy who looks worse is the guy who's losing, and I just can't help but think that maybe that was influential in the judges' decisions.
Who knows? It may very well might have been, and it's so funny because I hate to agree with you, but I agree with you. I watched that fight. When I first saw it, I said, "Wow, I can't believe Chocolatito is going to lose this fight." And then when I did watch it again, I saw that wait a minute, he scored here, he looks good here. The blood was definitely a factor. So Billy C, it's an interesting observation by you, and we'll have to see, and maybe just keep a good open eye for this fight this weekend. See what happens.
I agree. Listen, we're going to take a short break. When we come back, I got some emails, so don't go anywhere. So we'll be back in 2.
Billy C will be right back.
Snacking has never been this exciting. At Graze.com, we combine wholesome ingredients with the flavors we all love to create over 100 exciting snacks. Like these. We'd love to send you a Graze sampler box for free. Just go to Graze.com, enter the code ENJOY36, and we'll mail your free box to your home or office. Join thousands of Grazers already in love with our exciting snacks. So come to Graze.com for your first box free.
This is important news for women using birth control medications and devices. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with a pseudotumor after using one of these birth control drugs or devices, you may be eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Contact the law firm of Davis & Crump right now if you or a loved one have used one of these birth control medications or devices and were diagnosed with a pseudotumor to see if you are eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Call now. Operators are standing by.
Listen to this important message. If you owe money to the IRS, you will want to hear this. Penalties and interest compound daily on your back taxes, putting you under a mountain of debt. Tax 10,000 has years of experience connecting people with tax resolution specialists. Working through the IRS Fresh Start program, they will handle all the necessary forms, and if you qualify, you may end up saving thousands of dollars. Call Tax 10,000 at 800-773-4604. Listen.
Are you currently on Medicare? In other words, do you carry the red, white, and blue Medicare card? If so, are you suffering from chronic back pain? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a pain-relieving back brace covered by Medicare at little to no cost, shipped directly to your home for free. These medical-grade back braces are ideal for lower back pain, arthritis, spinal disorders, and other chronic back problems. Will you qualify for a medical-grade back brace?
Call Back Brace America at 1-800-290-8300.
Check out BillyCBoxing.com now, or feel the wrath of the mighty mustache.
Oh, that hurts! Why are you doing that to my face? I hate you!
That's BillyCBoxing.com. Consider this your warning. Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're listening and watching the Billy C. Show. Glad you could be with us. And by the way, don't forget, I know you can get this show in many forms. We are on TV. We are on the radio. We are on podcasts. We are on the internet. We are on YouTube. And we also simulcast on Facebook Live. And if you're watching us on Facebook Live, and we appreciate that, don't forget to get the full version. We're very limited with Facebook Live. They don't allow us to do several things. But if you want to get the same version of this show that we air on the television networks, just come on over to our YouTube page, and you can reach that by going to youtube.com/talkin, TALKIN, boxing, BOXING. I'm here with my man, Sal Rocky Senecola. And Sal, we got a couple of emails. You ready to roll on these?
I am ready to go, but I appreciate you letting everybody know where we are, because Reminds me of an old saying that a friend once told me was, wherever you are, you're there.
No, it's not. Your old friend said, don't forget, wherever you go, there you are. Jeez.
There you go.
Man. If you're going to steal my lines, get it right at least, But this first one's from my man, Jesse. He says, hey, Billy C. and Sal, I can't wait for this Saturday's matchup. It should be a great time for these small division fighters. The best fight probably would be Kubrat against Estrada. Action-packed boxers. Inoue will demolish his opponent, and Chocolatito will be the same. I hope the winner. Yeah, that's interesting that he thinks Chocolatito will destroy his opponent this time. He says, I hope the winners will face each other. If that happens, they will all lose to Inoue. Even though Inoue does not have the resume and experience, he's too young, fast, and talented to beat those fighters. I think he meant that he's so young and talented that he will beat those fighters. He says, don't get me wrong, they will make it tough for him, but his talent is just too much. Brian versus Inoue, and the winner of the other fight, Brian versus Inoue, which will be Inoue. You got me a little confused with all your innuendos. Anyway, he says, Billy, will David Benavidez be the youngest champ in history for the super middleweight division at age 20? He should beat Gravel, even though Gravel is dangerous. J-Leon Love versus Abihan will be a war because Han gives it his all. I am just totally unimpressed with J-Leon Love. Abihan is a guy that never really, he's good for the B level and below, but as soon as he steps on, I'm not suggesting J-Leon Love is an A-level fighter by any means, but I think Han will give him all kinds of trouble, and just to have J-Leon Love just get out of the picture, I would love to see Han get the upset. As far as David Benavidez being the youngest super middleweight champ at age 20, you know what? I don't know for a fact, but I think so. I can't, the super middleweight division, I can't think of another off the top of my head, and the super middleweight division is fairly young. It came about in the 80s. I can't think of another super middleweight that was younger than David Benavidez. Can you, Sal?
No, I cannot. I still try and no, I cannot. I cannot think of that. Just like Wilfredo Benitez, does he still hold that record as the youngest welterweight champion, right?
I would think. He was about 18, 19. So he says, what's your thoughts on upset victories of Iran Diaz versus Concepcion and Centeno versus Aleem? Will they get a shot against a top 10 fighter? You know what? When you win, you should be rewarded, and when they bring a fighter in that is supposed to lose, and the favorite, the A side, so to speak, loses to the opponent, I think that says a lot of stuff. Number one, it says the opponent is better than people thought, and you can't go by losses on a record. And number two, which is more obvious, the A-side fighter either just was simply not as good as advertised or took the opponent lightly. And, I think that's all too common in the United States fighters today. Sal, we talk about these tournaments and no American fighters being involved with the World Boxing Super Series tournament. I just don't think that the United States they may have the better athletes, but they're certainly not proving it in the ring.
No, I agree with you. They, they like to have the fighting with the mouth too, and we have to see these guys step up and take on the challenges and rise to the occasion and challenge themselves, and that's what we're waiting to see from a lot of fighters out there today.
I got another email. This one, thanks for the email, Jesse. This is 2 parts from my man Johnston, and he says, "Hey Billy C and Sal, you mentioned on the show that the Super Series hasn't been advertised much, and not many broadcasters are picking up the fights. Well, the good news is, on this side of the pond, now Johnson is over in England, he says ITV4 has announced the live coverage of Callum Smith against Eric Sokolund on September 16th. They have not confirmed if they are going to show all of the World Boxing Super Series bouts, although it's expected that the competition will be sold to networks as a package deal. The format keeps off in the cruiserweight division with Usyk going against Huck on Saturday night, which is this weekend, and ITV is also going to cover that. They also are claiming that ITV box office will be airing the Eubank Jr. Yildirim fight and Groves James Cox on October 7th and October 14th, respectively. So that sounds good. He says, on another note, I'm sure you're right, but it's no big secret. Joshua Pulev is set for Cardiff in October 28th. The question is, will the WBA strip him? Here's some quotes from Joshua. He says, I've been eager to get back in the ring since Wembley, which he's referring to his fight with Klitschko. He says, I've been locked away, focusing on fight number 20 for the I will be locked away for the next 8 weeks. I'm excited to experience the atmosphere in a sold-out Principality Stadium and aim to give the fans a spectacular fight. Pulev said, Anthony is a formidable opponent. We will not hug, we will not hold, we will not run. We will stand and fight. His style fits mine perfectly, and in boxing, style makes fights. My preparation will be very intense, and I will be perfectly ready when I enter the ring so that he will have no chance to beat me. Thanks for the quotes, Johnston. I like to hear the confidence, Sal, of Pulev, and obviously we say it all the time, styles do make fights, but in this case, I just think the athleticism of Anthony Joshua, even though Pulev feels his style suits him, I think the athleticism, and we've seen Anthony Joshua, his hand speed and the way he delivers punches and stuff, in addition to his humongous size, I think it's just going to be too much for Pulev.
Well, I think you're right, and we look at it, and Anthony Joshua, he's got a crushing blow. The guy's devastating with the way he can deliver a punch. He puts his leverage, he sits on him, he's great. He's got the delivery of a punch. He turns him over well. So it is definitely an execution style punch to a lot of opponents. My concern and my only question would be, how Pulev, and we do say this all the time, styles do make fights, how Pulev is going to go in there and try to tire out Joshua to see if that was a once in a fight kind of thing when he got gassed out with the combinations he threw against Klitschko. I believe it was round 5 or so or 4, but that totally spent his whole resource, and that's why he got dropped and almost knocked out the following round. But that would be my strategy if I was in the Pulev camp is try to get Joshua to the later rounds, try to move and outbox and see what he could do, and stay away from some of those crushing blows. And when you're inside, tie him up and wrestle with him and wear him down a little bit. But Joshua's a big, strong guy. That's going to be hard to come out on the positive side when you're doing that with a big, strong guy like that.
No doubt. Plus, he doesn't have the athleticism. I got 2 more emails I want to fly through here because we got a break here in 2 minutes. But here's one. For all you long-time listeners, obviously, you've heard the back-and-forth comments that we've had over the years with Nobody Here. And a listener, Nobody Here, was around. He was in the chat room. He called in and gave some interesting perspectives on different topics we was having, and we haven't heard from him until today. I got an email actually yesterday. He says, "Hey, Billy C, I still listen to your show now on YouTube." He says, "It's cool how you guys have the whole gang on video. Nice touch. I had to write you after hearing your commentary on the Mayweather fight." He says, "I think you shouldn't think of Mayweather as bamboozling anyone." He says, "Instead, call him an anti-champion. His career is a response to failures of champions before him, namely finances, health, and fighting in the mythical prime for jewelry." And he puts in parentheses belts, fans, and notoriety. It's funny he says that because at one point he said that the more belts, the better it was for boxing. Anyway, he says, "In fact, his career is more like him assuming the role of the consummate big boss villain. Would-be champions and heroes collect jewelry and fans just so they can face the big boss, which is Floyd. But in this story, for reasons good and bad, the villain always wins. In the end, it's just another way of being a long-time reigning champion. Boxing had 21 years to dethrone him and couldn't, so be it. And, of course, like a villain, he even admits that he's not the greatest, but rather that he's the best ever. Ha ha." He says, "We knew McGregor was going to lose, but the best part about this fight wasn't even the fight. It was the fact that I could watch this fight with non-boxing fans, and they enjoyed it. That's a win in my book." You know what? As much as I hate to agree with nobody here, I agree. I agree with nobody here. I think that he's right. And I think that the way his perspective is right. And I do agree that Mayweather has taken his career to a safety-first level and, specifically tried to avoid all those things, failures financially, failure in health, the diminishing skill set. And I think that that's indicative of his choice of opponents for the last several years. So I agree with nobody here. And I also agree that it was a win to have boxing fans and non-boxing fans and MMA fans all enjoying the fight. Thanks for the email, nobody here, and I'm glad to hear that you're still watching the show. And finally, one last email. This one's from Joel. He says, thanks for taking my call Monday. I enjoyed catching up with you in the world of boxing. He says, with the Canelo Triple G fight less than 2 weeks away and the majority of the boxing world discussing it, I was curious to see what you and Sal thought about the undercard. Is there an undercard fight that you're looking forward to that really stands out? Joel says, I personally am looking forward to watching Ryan Martin. I think Diego De La Hoya versus Randy Caballero is a competitive fight, as I think the same for Jojo Diaz and Jorge Lara. Real quickly, we did talk about this. I enjoy watching Ryan Martin. I think Diego De La Hoya against Randy Caballero probably will be a very competitive fight. Jojo Diaz against Jorge Lara, also good fights. My quick opinion on this is that undercard is very good, except I just don't think it's pay-per-view worthy, but certainly Triple G versus Canelo is. Sal, what's your quick thoughts on that?
Well, again, when it comes to the undercards, I never buy a pay-per-view for an undercard, and I'm always looking for the main event. And, I think it was a good perspective, but, I'm just really looking right now at that Triple G Canelo Alvarez fight.
Can't wait for it. Sal?
Can't wait. In fact,
we're going to kick you to the curb for a little bit. Yeah, you got the he's donning the Triple G Canelo shirt, which he claims he's sending me one, but we'll see. He said that to Joel about his own shirts. But Sal, go have some coffee. We'll be back to you in a little bit. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're scheduled to have Boxing Hall of Famer Larry Hazard join us, so don't go nowhere.
Billy C will be right back.
If you're over the age of 50 and considering buying an annuity in the next 60 days, I have some important news for you. Don't buy an annuity until you understand the pros and cons of annuities. A free book to help you maximize your retirement income from television host and three-time author Josh Melberg has been released. This book reveals little-known truths about annuity strategies in simple-to-understand terms. Grab a pen right now because we are about to offer you this free book that unlocks the 5 little-known secrets we believe baby boomers and seniors should know before buying an annuity. Call 800-493-9652 now, and you'll receive a free copy of Josh Melberg's book, Next Gen Annuity Strategies Revealed. As a bonus, we'll also send you the #1 mistakes retirees are making with their investments today, and a free DVD on how you can get up to 33% more income in retirement. Call 800-493-9652 to have your free information kit rushed to your door. Again, that's 800-493-9652.
If you or a loved one have had hernia repair surgery with mesh reinforcement and suffered infection, chronic pain, mesh migration, mesh failure, organ damage, or needed additional surgery, call the Rely On Group right now. You may be eligible to receive a cash award and compensation for your medical expenses. Your voice deserves to be heard. Call the Rely On Group to be connected with a personal injury attorney for a free consultation. Call 800-715-4869. That's 800-715-4869.
Snacking has never been this exciting. At Graze.com, we combine wholesome ingredients with the flavors we all love to create over 100 exciting snacks. Like these. We'd love to send you a Graze sampler box for free. Just go to Graze.com, enter the code ENJOY36, and we'll mail your free box to your home or office. Join thousands of Grazers already in love with our exciting snacks. So come to Graze.com for your first box free.
Hey, fight fans, check out KOFantasyBoxing.com. KO Fantasy Boxing is boxing's only trademarked fantasy game. Check it out, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. Select your own gym, your own fighters. Track them through a season that can last from 3 months to a year, depending upon which league you join. You got to check this out, man. www.kofantasyboxing.com. Join it today. Again, www.kofantasyboxing.com, and tell them Billy C sent ya.
Broadcasting in all corners of the globe, on the web and radio.
He would scoff at a stretch of that man, I would think.
Alla tagliata, messa fuori, c'è Pirlo.
You're listening to Talkin' Boxing with Billy C. from upstate New York in the good old US of A.
Boxing is here to stay because we are here to stay.
The best 2 hours of boxing talk on the airwaves.
The one, the only, Don King.
Makes me feel good, Billy, to have you, the #1 show in the country, talking boxing with Billy. So I invite each and every American that's listening to this great show to tune in, because we want you to be there with Billy and me.
Check out BillyCBoxing.com now, or feel the wrath of the mighty mustache.
Oh, that hurts. Why are you doing that to my face? I hate you.
That's BillyCBoxing.com. Consider this your warning.
Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're listening and watching the Billy C Show. Glad you could be with us today. And speaking about being with us, joining us right now, Boxing Hall of Famer, my main man, Larry Hazard. Good morning, Larry.
Hey, Billy, how you doing, man?
Not too bad, my man. Not too bad. I got a bunch of things I want to talk to you about. It seems like we haven't talked to you in years. But first, I got an email that's written from Chris from Canada, and it's to you. He says, Roy Jones Jr. versus Montel Griffith. He says, Larry, can you reminisce and talk about the backlash that you received about disqualifying Roy Jones Jr., giving him his first loss?
Well, I didn't really get any backlash except from Roy.
Well, hey, that's probably he probably throws that in your face every time you see him now, right?
No, not really. You know, Roy and I are very, very amicable when we see each other. As a matter of fact, Roy knows that I really think that Roy was one of the very best. I also, I've listened to him on HBO. He's very knowledgeable, except that most conversation ends up talking about Roy. But still in all, he earned it. He earned it in there. But as far as the backlash is concerned, hey, look, it's like this. He hit Montel not just once, but he hit him twice while he was on the canvas. Okay? It was clear that occurred. Montel, of course, couldn't continue in the fight. So we have rules and regulations. I just came from Maryland. You remember the disqualification that took place with the Durrell kid? I can't pronounce the guy from Mexico, Ustescu or whatever his name was. You remember that happened a month or so ago, Billy?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, I just went down to Maryland because they filed a hearing and tried to get that disqualification overturned. So the Maryland commissioner, Pat Pinella, who's a good friend of mine, he asked me to come down. Yes, he asked me to come down as an expert witness. And believe it or not, the other side had Steve Smoger come in as an expert witness.
Wait a minute. Steve Smoger came in for Team Durrell or Yusuf Guy?
Yusuf Guy.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. He came in to criticize the mechanics. You know, I found this to be very odd. He came in as an active referee who just a week ago got punched. I'm surprised he still has his nose left, okay, talking about poor mechanics. He came in to criticize a fellow referee, Bill Clancy, saying that, he exercised poor judgment, poor mechanics, and he was supporting Guy's contention that the fight should be, that the disqualification should be thrown out and that he should be declared the winner. And I found that very odd that a active referee, and of course during his examination, it was revealed that the promoters paid him $1,000 to come in as their expert witness. I didn't get paid anything, of course. I went in to support the commission's position that the punch came after the bell, and it was a foul after the fighter had been warned several times, and he was disqualified. Well, getting back to the Roy Jones situation, there was really no discussion to be had on that issue. Roy actually hit the man twice while he was down. So the only backlash that I can recall from that was from the Roy Jones camp, which was to be expected, So that's, I guess, hopefully I could I can't explain that any more clearly than that. And I see Roy, he's accepted that, although I see that he has referenced it several times during discussions in which he, was discussing on HBO on Fight Night. But he was always a gentleman about it. He did what he could to see if we would reconsider that, the disqualification. But, the rules are there to be obeyed, and it is what it is, and that's what happened.
Well,
of course, he vindicated himself with the rematch, so hopefully that, gave him some consolation.
Well, first of all, I want to thank you for sending me that clip of Smoger getting the shot to the head. That was very enjoyable when I watched it. And to tell you the truth, to hear that he was paid, doesn't that negate his opinion because he's coming in as kind of like an employee of one side, and wouldn't that be a conflict of interest? I mean, to me, I don't think that they should have allowed his comments once money was transferred, especially if it was publicized. And as far as that fight, yeah, he was warned. My thought was that he was in motion, but you're right. I mean, it was clearly after the bell, but I don't think that. I think if anything, that result maybe gets, they order a rematch. And change it to a no contest, or leave it as a DQ, but order a rematch. I mean, to me, it's, they should have that fight. But, we had spoken about that. It just seems that trouble follows the Durrell camp, either brother. And, yeah. I don't know. But,
Well, look, they were going for a double win. Okay. The other fighter, the IBF already ordered a rematch. The commission really doesn't have the authority to order rematches. Okay, the commission makes a decision, and that's it. As far as the promotional end of it, they can't, the commission can't declare that there shall be a rematch or whatever. It's over once the commission rules on their behalf. But the IBF did rule opposite the commission. So, but they were just going for the home run. They just were insistent that they wanted it all, and they didn't get it all. The commission board upheld the commission ruling. So, they got their rematch. I think that the IBF did declare it a no contest for whatever reason, but I'm sure that's more business than doing it right, okay, because whoever made that decision at the IBF, I don't know of anybody in their administrative organization on that half that have any experience as a referee or as a judge in boxing. So I find it kind of odd that people who have no pedigree can make those type of decisions, really, But anyway.
Hey, Larry, I got a question that is being... I got a bunch of stuff I needed to talk to you about, but one more thing on that issue that we jumped into, that DQ. In the chat room, they're asking me to ask you, did the commission touch on anything else, including the aftermath of that fight? The sucker punch by the guy in the corner. I mean, I know they suspended him, and criminal charges were put on him. But I've never heard another thing about it. They were supposed to have gone back to court, I believe, sometime in August, and I've never heard anything about it. Was any of that discussed, or were they just concentrating on the result of the fight?
They just concentrated on the result of the fight. They didn't touch on any of the aftermath or any of the other associative events that took place. They strictly stuck to the result of the fight, and their focus was on whether whatever that fighter's name is.
Just call him Jose. Just call him Jose. When I can't pronounce their last name.
Jose.
Right, Jose is easy. We could say that.
Yeah. Well, I did it. I also did that at the hearing. I wasn't going to try to tackle his name, but no, they only focused on the testimony given by Jose's camp, the so-called expert testimony given by Smoja, and of course, I came afterwards, and they focused on my testimony and the background information relative to the decision. That was it.
Okay, it's time. Let me ask you your thoughts on the event. I don't want to call it a fight, but an event between Mayweather and McGregor. I was impressed with McGregor. After 6 rounds, I was actually scoring the fight, believe it or not. And after 6 rounds, I had it even, 3 rounds apiece, and then Floyd just took over. What I saw, Larry, and I know we communicated a little bit through email or whatever, but what I saw was actually surprised me. Number one, McGregor's no boxer. I mean, he had no footwork, no defense. He had no power, which shocked the hell out of me. The only chance I was giving him was I had this misconception that he had this punching power, and he doesn't even deliver his punches well, the correct way, at least in boxing. But the one thing I noticed was that the unorthodox way that he was delivering his jab, Floyd had no answer for it, Larry. I mean, it was like he was hitting him at will with the jab. I was shocked. And there's no way. I mean, I've had Floyd fans tell me, oh, he was letting him do that. No way. You do not let somebody smack you square in the face the way he was getting hit. The problem was, in my opinion, was that they had no idea of what to do. They stuck to their game plan when they should have changed it and tried to beat Floyd with the jab all night. They would have won on the scorecard should they have kept that up. And then somehow the fatigue factor came in. What was your thoughts on the event, the fight, etc.?
Well, of course, the conclusion was what we all expected. I was a little bit surprised at the way Floyd was fighting starting out. But then after hearing his explanation relative to the strategy that him and his dad had planned, then I said, well, I guess it made sense. It worked, okay? But I, like you, I was a bit surprised at McGregor's effectiveness with, I don't even know if you want to call it a jab, because you could see he had no real boxing technique or skills whatsoever. But whatever he was doing, I call it a pouring. He was pouring, P-A-W, at Floyd. He was effective with that, at least for the first 3 rounds. I think I gave him the first 3 rounds. And round 4 was close, but I think that's when Floyd, in my opinion, started turning it up.
Yeah.
Now, what I saw in this fight, after looking at it, and by the way, I didn't buy it, but I did go to my son's house Okay, they kicked me out of the house. My wife kicked me out of the house.
I know.
And made
Hey,
me
listen,
go home.
your wife looks forward to pay-per-views when you leave the house. Come on, man. You weren't allowed to stay in the house. I mean, they had other things going on. They had to get you out. You knew that.
So I went to my son's house. What I saw here was new territory for both. And what I mean by that is this. McGregor in his career and most of his fights, I don't think many or if any of his fights went beyond 3 rounds, which in MMA, as you know, at his level, those 3 rounds would total maybe 15 minutes, 3 5-minute rounds. Floyd, of course, new territory for him was because Floyd was always, throughout his career, which made him rather boring sometimes, he'd sit back there in the pocket and let the fighter, his opponent, come to him, and he'd demonstrate his defensive skills and his ability to counterattack. So in this particular situation, Floyd had to carry the fight to McGregor, which he did after round 4, which was new for him. But what was really new for McGregor was going into deep water. As the fight got late into the later rounds, he started to tire. And that's because he had never gone beyond a 15, 20-minute limit in a fight. Now you're talking about going into 30, 35 minutes, 40 minutes, and he just was not conditioned to meet that challenge. And, of course, you saw what happened. The very punch that's effective against all southpaws, whether it be in boxing or MMA, is that lead right hand against southpaws and the shots to the body. That just wore him down with the overall fatigue factor that kicked in because he just was not used to going into that type of contest. And so, Floyd was able to, come through in the end.
Yeah,
and
it just
the outcome was what we all expected.
Yeah, and as an I've said this all along. If this fight was an exhibition, I'd have no problem with it. As a matter of fact, I liked the fact that it had so much interest, and we had so many crossover people watching it. We did it an event, and the guy who sold this, I'll tell you right now. I know Floyd has done very well with pay-per-views throughout his career. But the guy who sold this fight was McGregor. Everybody that I saw that watched this fight was rooting for McGregor. I mean, they were all MMA fans, and they really thought that he was going to win this fight. I don't really want to talk about Floyd anymore, unless for some reason he fights again, which I hope he doesn't. But I just think it's sad. I mean, it's good for him financially, and, it was an easy fight for him. But what I can't get over is, number one, that they approved the fight. I really have lost a lot of respect for Bob Bennett and the Nevada State Athletic Commission for approving that fight. I don't think that it should have been a sanctioned fight. And for all intent purposes, as a sanctioned fight and a 50th win, which we both agree is only, important in the heavyweight division, really, I'm a little disappointed in Floyd. A guy that wants everybody to have him up at the top. That's not how you prove it. You don't prove it by fighting a guy who can't box. It's like, I used an analogy, Larry. I said, it's like taking a quarterback who's a successful quarterback in NFL, and then all of a sudden say, hey, guess what? Here, take off the shoulder pads. Here's a baseball. You're pitching in the World Series tomorrow night. And he never threw a pitch in his life with a baseball. I mean, and then it's just you can't do it. And that's what happened. But anyway, go ahead. I didn't mean to.
Well, what I was going to say is that I think that Floyd, with all of his skills and with all of his abilities as a boxer. Because I do believe that Floyd is a fantastic. He's an outstanding fighter. He's the best of his era. He's proven that. But I think that he would have done himself, and I think that even his fans probably would have had a greater level of appreciation for him if he had called out the best guy, like Sugar Ray Leonard did when he called out Marvin Hagler in a real fight. And I think that the 50th win would be more accepting to the general public and to the boxing purists if he had won against, someone with equal, or at least, someone coming from the boxing profession. It would have been, I think, a bit more enhancing to Floyd's career. And by the way, the 50, that record, just so people will understand that you're talking about retiring undefeated, because there were a lot of fighters who, had 50 or more fights before they lost. Okay, so, that's a little ambiguous when people talk about that 50-0 record or 49-0. They're talking about being able to retire, as Rocky Marciano did. So Floyd is now, able to do that, although number 50 was not against a fighter.
Yeah, but the other thing about that is no other heavyweight, though. See, I look at that as heavyweight because no other heavyweight reached 49-0. The only guy that came close was Larry Holmes. He was 48-0 before he fought Spinks. So that's the division. No other heavyweight ever reached that. And you're right.
Well, that's another point. Yeah,
many fighters surpassed the 50. But just to your point, I agree with you 100%. And the Sugar Ray Leonard Marvin Hagler is the exact example I use. But the funny thing about it is not only would have, and I just said this in the chat room. Somebody made a comment, but the truth of the matter is that if Floyd Mayweather challenged the winner of, let's say, Triple G Canelo, my respect for Floyd would skyrocket. Whether he won, whether he lost, or whether the fight was a draw, his overall position, at least in my personal all-time great list, would rise dramatically. The thing about the Sugar Ray Leonard Hagler fight was the fact that people still remember that. Sugar Ray Leonard lost after that fight, but people still remember that accomplishment. And that's something that, talk about etching yourself in history, and that's something that Floyd does not have. He does not have that signature fight. I'm sorry, he does not have it. He's got a lot of wins. He's got financial success. He's undefeated. Arguably the best of his generation, et cetera, but he doesn't have a signature fight. I can't. The fight that comes to mind, the two fights that come to mind that he fought in 50 wins, is the Pacquiao-Bohr snooze fest and this last one against McGregor, which shouldn't have even happened. He's lacking a signature fight, Larry.
Well, I have to agree with that. He never had the right dance partner, I can tell you that, because we really don't know exactly how good this kid really is. We know that he's outstanding, but unless you call out the best guy, we really never know just how good you are if you don't get the right partner. I haven't seen, in Floyd's career, there's still that big question mark, and it's gonna haunt him now, because I don't think that he ever really had the right dance partner, because there could be more that we never saw from Floyd Mayweather.
Oh, I agree.
And I think he did himself a little bit of a disservice by, calling out McGregor. Yes, it was a very successful event money-wise. So if it's all about the money, then he made the right decision.
Well, if it's all about the money, he's number one. There's no question.
Absolutely.
If we have a ranking about,
that's the case, if that's the case, you can't argue.
Exactly.
But I would think at this point in time for him, it could be or should be a little bit more about his legacy, and I think that he did miss a great opportunity there. Well, there would be no question. There would be no, there wouldn't be a whole lot of conversation about Floyd Mayweather and his career if he had called out the best guy in his final bow. He could have answered and dispatched with all of the questions in just one fight, and he still would have made a lot of money on top of it.
You know what, Larry? That is so true. And then all of the people like myself who bitch and moan about the cherry picking for all those other fights get shoved under the carpet. Nobody remembers none of that. If he comes out and picks the best guy out there, that's what he would go down. And you're 100% right. And in a way, Floyd, as successful as he was in the bank, he cheated the fans of show. I don't think we ever saw the best Floyd Mayweather. I think that the best Floyd Mayweather was kept under wraps, and it's a shame because you want to at least show it. And in today's world, with the video and the historical history being saved forever and ever, it would have been a hard guy to beat down the road if he did that throughout his career. But hey, I got less than a minute, and I got to get your thoughts. These sanctioning bodies that are threatening to strip fighters, like for example the WBA threatening to strip Joshua, and the IBF forcing Terrence Crawford to give up his belt so quickly. Do you think that it hurts the sanctioning body to distance themselves from these super A+ level fighters like AJ and Terrence Crawford? I mean, over the greed factor, or do you think that they just don't want to allow unified champions?
Well, they don't care. Okay, you see, they don't care. People, this is what people have to understand. Even boxing people, learned boxing people like yourself. And I'm so thankful that I got the opportunity to work for a few years for a sanctioning organization. And I was pretty involved in the business aspect of it because I was the personal assistant to the president. They don't care. They don't care. They take the guy's belt. There comes another, somebody else come along, and even that guy that they stripped, he'll come back. These fighters are mesmerized by those belts. The WBC, they just keep making more and more. They got a special belt, for Triple G and Canelo. A belt, another belt, this, that. These fighters are mesmerized by these belts. So, they strip a fighter wins the title in the ring, they come along, take the fighter out, and the people making these decisions, that's the sad part about it. Most of these guys wouldn't know a left hook from a fish hook, but they're making very critical boxing decisions, about world champions, world-class fighters who put their lives on the line to win championships, and then they come along and strip them away. And it's all because it can generate more money, or just so that they can, purport themselves as boxing authorities. But they don't care. So we'll be talking. We could talk about this forever, and they'll just keep right on doing it, and are successful at doing it.
Listen, I couldn't agree with you more. And the greed factor is the biggest enemy of the sport. But hey, Larry, it was great chatting with you again, and we'll look forward to next week because we'll be talking about the Chocolatito rematch, and hopefully we get treated to a good fight. I think it's a very good card, and I'm looking forward to it this weekend.
Okay, me too, Billy.
All right, my man. Have a great day.
Okay, you too.
That's Boxing Hall of Famer Larry Hazard giving us his thoughts, and thanks for the email directed to him. I'm going to take a short break. When we come back, today's Blast from the Past, Abe Attell is on deck. We'll be back in 2.
Billy C will be right back. Part of the Billy C Boxing Network.
Listen to this important message. If you owe money to the IRS, you will want to hear this. Penalties and interest compound daily on your back taxes, putting you under a mountain of debt. Tax 10,000 has years of experience connecting people with tax resolution specialists. Working through the IRS Fresh Start program, they will handle all the necessary forms, and if you qualify, you may end up saving thousands of dollars. Call Tax 10,000 at 800-773-4604.
This is important news for women using birth control medications and devices. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with a pseudotumor after using one of these birth control drugs or devices, you may be eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Contact the law firm of Davis & Crump right now if you or a loved one have used one of these birth control medications or devices and were diagnosed with a pseudotumor to see if you are eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Call now. Operators are standing by.
If you're over the age of 50 and considering buying an annuity in the next 60 days, I have some important news for you. Don't buy an annuity until you understand the pros and cons of annuities. A free book to help you maximize your retirement income from television host and three-time author Josh Melberg has been released. This book reveals little-known truths about annuity strategies in simple-to-understand terms. Grab a pen right now because we are about to offer you this free book that unlocks the 5 little-known secrets we believe baby boomers and seniors should know before buying an annuity. Call 800-493-9652 now, and you'll receive a free copy of Josh Melberg's book, Next Gen Annuity Strategies Revealed. As a bonus, we'll also send you the #1 mistakes retirees are making with their investments today, and a free DVD on how you can get up to 33% more income in retirement. Call 800-493-9652 to have your free information kit rushed to your door. Again, that's 800-493-9652.
Are you currently on Medicare? In other words, do you carry the red, white, and blue Medicare card? If so, are you suffering from chronic back pain? If you answered yes, you may be eligible for a pain-relieving back brace covered by Medicare at little to no cost, shipped directly to your home for free. These medical-grade back braces are ideal for lower back pain, arthritis, spinal disorders, and other chronic back problems. Will you qualify for a medical-grade back brace?
Call Back Brace America at 1-800-290-8300.
Check out BillyCBoxing.com now, or feel the wrath of the mighty mustache.
Oh, that hurts! Why are you doing that to my face? I hate you!
That's BillyCBoxing.com. Consider this your warning.
Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're listening and watching the Billy C. Show. Glad you could be with us. And it's that time again. Every week we do one of our, it is our longest running segment, and it's one of your favorites. It's our Blast from the Past. And this week's Blast from the Past, which is being sponsored by KOFantasyBoxing.com. Check it out, www.KOFantasyBoxing.com. And the Title Bout Championship computer game, which has a new version out now, so download your copy now. You can visit our website, BillyCBoxing.com, and click on the Title Bout banner, which is right there on the right-hand side. This week's Blast from the Past features former world champion and Boxing Hall of Famer Abe Attell. And joining us right now to tell us all about Abe Attell, since he's so... I just noticed how knowledgeable he is about Abe Attell. He's going to fill us in on that. Alex Papali, what's up, my man? You know, geez, aren't you related to Abe somehow? I mean, just cut it short. Just tell us a little bit about him, all right?
All right. Yeah, we're cousins.
Yeah. Abe Attell. He was. Tell us about him, man. Go ahead.
Abe Attell. His real name was actually Abraham. Wait a minute.
Washington.
Abraham Washington Attell. And the thing that was interesting, this guy, his birthday was February 22nd, 1883. Some argument it could also be 1884. Patriots, mattress salesmen, and car dealers might recognize that date. It's also George Washington's birthday, the father of our country. But Abe Attell, his nickname was the Little Hebrew. He was just 5'4" tall, and he fought as a featherweight. And one thing that was interesting I'm not sure if the limit changed a little, because I think a lot of these fights, the limit was 122. Of course, now the limit for featherweight is 126. But Maybe at some point it changed over the years. I should have checked into that. But he he was born in San Francisco, and he grew up in a tough immigrant neighborhood there. And it was actually the same neighborhood that James J. Corbett came out of. And he had to defend himself often as a child. His father left the family when Abe was just 13 years old. And then Billy C., he got into that trade that raises tough men.
I know. When I saw that, I was like, oh God, here's another one. You know, that's one thing that we seem to not be the one common denominator in a lot of these early day fighters was they had a battle to sell newspapers, man. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
And at one time,
picture this little kid there with his sleeves rolled up and a rolled up newspaper in one hand and a black eye.
Yeah. Well, it's like that movie where all during the movie the kid is going, "You owe me $2.15," and the paper guy is chasing the guy on skis, the whole nine. I forget what movie that was. He was
Better Off Dead. Yeah.
Yeah. He was avoiding the paper boy, you know, but. Anyway,
and that was the thing about it is back then in those days, newspaper boys. I don't know if it's true anymore. Now I think it's mostly middle-aged single men who deliver the newspaper in cars in the morning, in the wee hours of the morning. I know that because I did it once. So I guess newspaper boys, they must have fought over their beats and stuff. But he was one time selling newspapers outside the Mechanics Pavilion in San Francisco, and there was a world championship fight there, and he got into it. He decided trying the sweet science.
Well, the other thing, Alex, is that people don't really read newspapers anymore. You know, so I mean, the truth of the matter is, you know, I'm looking at our paper locally around here. It's like 10 pages, you know. It's like, well, you know, and that's why I used to get it. I used to love getting the newspaper, but now I know everything already by the time I pick up the newspaper. Like, news is reported so quickly, especially in our business, that it can't even go to print faster than you know it. You know, I mean, really, it's a dying media. It is sad to say, because I personally like to hold, you know, stuff in my hands to read. I like a book. I like the paper, you know, rather than reading it online. But back in his day, you didn't hear. I mean, you heard about new news could have taken place a week earlier.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because now where everything's instantaneous, you know, you learn things in a tweet. It's pretty slow. I mean, deadline writing. There's they have to have the story written by like 11:30 at night. In order to get it delivered by 4:30 in the morning. So yeah, it's kind of archaic these days. But like you said, some people still enjoy it. It's a part of their morning ritual.
You know, one thing I really noticed about Abe Attell, first and foremost, he was considered an excellent boxer, along with defense. I mean, he you know, for a guy that, for all intent and purposes, was self-taught. You know, he was fluid as a boxer. He wasn't known as knocking people out, although he did have slightly under a 40% knockout ratio for his plethora of fights. We'll get to that. But the thing that stuck out to me, one of the quickest things as I was reviewing Abe Attell's record, and by the way, it was a request from you guys. So if you have a blast from the past request, and we do have several in the queue, feel free to drop me an email, Billy@Talkin, TALKIN, boxing, BOXING.com. George Dixon, a boxing Hall of Famer. Abe Attell fought him in his 12th pro fight in 1901. He's fighting George Dixon. George Dixon had a record of 62 wins, 10 losses, and 29 draws. At that time, you know, this was also during that era of newspaper decisions, etc. And he went 10 rounds with him, Alex, to a draw. He fights this guy, who was a champion at the time, by the way.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. I mean, when we get to the amount of Hall of Famers this guy has fought, it's just ridiculous. And we're talking about an age when some of the fights were considered newspaper decisions, so there's not really an official who won, who lost. It depends like what region's writer covers your beat, and you get that his say so. Yeah, if I could just read, he's ranked number 41 in one of our most, not that Bert Sugar's an expert, the be-all and the end-all of boxing scholars by no means, but he's very colloquial, and he has a very engaging style, and colorful. And I do like this little, if I could read a little section of this would give you an idea of how he fought. One of the things, there was an article I read from 1975 by Red Smith, and what he called him was, he was a master boxer, a dedicated gambler, and a tireless schemer. And we'll get to that part, because that's also a very fascinating thing about Abe Attell. But here, Bert Sugar. With all the ease and grace of an early-day sand dancer, Attell could block, slip, duck, and sidestep, darting in and out and around his opponent, all the while feinting him into knots, and then with the greatest arm-to-body coordination in ring history, land his own devastating punches on his by now frustrated and beaten foe. It's a small wonder that this small, spidery ring magician was accorded the same honorary title that had been given to young Griffo before him, and would be given to Willie Pep after him, the Will-o'-the-Wisp. And what that is Will-o'-the-Wisp is a natural phenomenon. It's this, it's like a phosphorescent swamp gas that appears from gases releasing from all the, fermenting natural materials in a swamp. And it's thought of as sort of, it's not there, or it's not here, it's all around you. So imagine a fighter like that getting that name, just a guy who fights in a fog almost. But yeah, the thing about how many fights he had, even that's a question. BoxRec says he was 11-0-1 with 7 KOs before facing George Dixon the first time. They drew in their first fights, and then he beat him. But Cyber Boxing Zone actually has him at 27-0 with 21 KOs before facing Dixon the first time in Denver.
Well, some of those early fights, I guess, were considered exhibitions, at least in terms of BoxRec's opinion, and they try very hard to verify every single fight that they put, and what they do during the eras. And by all means, I'm not a huge BoxRec fan, but what they do is, for the newspaper decisions, they actually have gone back and taken the overall average of the newspaper decisions, because, as you suggest and are 100% correct, the beat writer from a local guy gives him the win, and that's how they get these wins and losses. But the George Dixon fights, according to at least BoxRec, they fought to a draw in the first time in 1901, again in 1901 later that year, just 2 months later, to another 20-round draw. The first one was a 10-round draw. Then he fights George Dixon again for a 20-round draw. And then the third time, 8 days later, he on October 28th, he finally wins a 15-round decision, and which starts the first question mark about Abe Attell. For all intent purposes, he should have been crowned the champion at that time. George Dixon had the title, and apparently the title was on the line, but he does not get credit for winning a title until 1904, when he beat Harry Forbes. But then again, he wasn't recognized by everybody until 1906, when he beat Jimmy Wall. So, we were always talking about today and all the title belts and stuff, but it seemed like there was a little confusion back then as well. But then again, back then, you claim you were the world title, and then somebody had to beat you. So it was pretty confusing in that era too, Alex.
Definitely. And just like we just had last week or 2 weeks ago with the made-up money belt, there actually was a belt given at the time. I think it was the Police Gazette, was published by Richard Fox, who was a big boxing, just loved boxing, and was sort of a I'm not sure what you would call it, but like sort of like a Dana White or something of the day, or maybe, well, not really a promoter. I mean, he was more of somebody who loved the sport and honored the fighters and wrote about the fighters. He published the book, the National Police Gazette, and he created a belt for that for the win over George Dixon. George Dixon was the first black champion in any division. He was Canadian, and it was Joe Gans who then came after him. That was actually the first African American.
Well, Fox from the Police Gazette, if I'm not mistaken, his belt was regarded as the world title, and it went back to John L. Sullivan.
That's what confused me, because that's what I thought too. But you're right; it didn't have official recognition for some reason until years later. So I was a little sketchy as to why that was.
Well, when they trace back the title, the linear title, it does go back to his belt, because remember, the Ring magazine wasn't even introduced until the 20s, and then they pick up from there. So, but anyway. Abe Attell clearly was regarded as the world champion by everyone by 1906. And talk about a who's who, which is another common thing. I mean, two common things that we always face doing blasts from the past, that they fought everybody in their era, and they were newspaper delivery boys at one point. But tell us about all the Hall of Famers that he's fought.
Okay, will do. Yeah, that's the thing. This badass newspaper boy fought lots of Hall of Famers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 of them. George K.O. Cheney, who was a murderous puncher. He fought him late in his career and defeated him. He was 1-0 against him. He fought the great Ad Walgast. It was a newspaper decision. He fought him in 10 rounds. Like you said, he beat George Dixon for the title. He was 1-0-2 against Dixon. One of those, I think, 2 of those fights actually. One being a 15-rounder and one being a 20-rounder, and then one being a 10-rounder. He fought Jim Driscoll, a newspaper decision, 10 rounds. Peerless Jim Driscoll, often referred to as Jem Driscoll as well. He was a guy from Cardiff, Wales, and considered another all-time great featherweight. He had a newspaper decision, 6th rounder with Battling Nelson. He was 1-1 against Johnny Kilbane. He was 0-1 against Freddie Welsh. He fought Owen Moran 5 times, 3 newspaper decisions and 2 draws. And he fought Jim Driscoll once, 10-round newspaper decision. So that's pretty crazy. I think recently we did another guy who had who was it? Maybe Gene Fulmer, who had a list of Hall of Famers like that. But when you see a guy like that, I mean, they don't make them like that anymore.
No, we had Gene Fulmer and Fritzy Zivic both. We did Fritzy Zivic, right? Yeah, they both fought a bunch of them too. But and the thing with Abe Attell is that he continued. He so-called retired several times, but back then, it wasn't like staying out of the ring a couple of years. He retired, then came back a couple of months later. So he pretty much consistently fought. The biggest space in his career really was at the end, after he beat George K.O. Cheney, like you referred to. That was 1913. He did lose a newspaper decision a couple of months later. Then he took 2 years off before he would come back and beat Frankie Callahan, and did something Floyd Mayweather did. Here's a guy that had 72 wins at the time, and he fought a pro debut in Gloversville, New York, which happens to be close to where I am right now, which is pretty amazing that they even had electricity or life going on, because they just got running water not too long ago in Gloversville. But his last fight took place 2 years after that, which was in 1917, a loss. Interesting thing about Abe Attell was that back in those days, and not only did they fight a lot back in those days, Alex, And we've talked about this many, many times. Boxing was more of a trade. But in a way to make additional money, a lot of fighters bet on themselves. It was gambling in the sport of boxing was very big because the fights were much more even. So betting on fights, there was a lot of money to be made, which obviously resulted in some fixed fights, et cetera, But Abe Attell bet on himself a lot, as did a lot of fighters. Well, he would be forever linked to gambling. You want to fill us in on that?
Yeah, like you said, he was accused in at least one fight of doing that, of sort of laying down. Not laying down, he didn't get stopped, but he didn't fight. If you watch the fight, he threw very few. Well, there was no watching the fight back then. There was no tape, but they said the reports were that he didn't throw punches. So he had been accused of that, and maybe it was one of those things where he bet on the other guy. Like we said, he was always into gambling and high-stakes schemer. He was involved in the Chicago Black Sox scandal. And it's very possible he was the bag man. He was indicted. However, they did not convict him. I guess eventually the charges are thrown out, or he just did not get convicted. But allegedly, when the Chicago White Sox threw the World Series, he was one of the ones who, with the gangster Arnold Rothstein, he was actually supposedly the bag man who brought the money from Rothstein to the players who threw the game.
He was several of the players testified against Abe Attell in that scandal, and Attell throughout the whole process maintained innocence. He said, "I was framed. I didn't do it. I didn't do it."
It was a different Attell.
There was a sandwich in that bag. But at the end result was, despite being indicted and dragged through it, they eventually dropped their charges against him for lack of evidence, which I find pretty amazing, since I think there were 6 players that all testified against Abe Attell. But nonetheless, he had already stopped his boxing career a year prior to that, and he was operating a shoe store in New York City. And this is where it gets a little confusing to me, Alex. Maybe you can tell me, but I think he operated a shoe store until 1926, where he became a vaudeville actor in 1926, and then it goes blank for me. I don't know what he did. He lived to 1970. Do you have any idea what Abe Attell was doing after the scandal, after his shoe store, and after vaudeville?
I did not hear about the shoe store or vaudeville. All I have was that he became a resident of New York City, and he operated a tavern. So, he ran a bar. He passed away at 85 years old.
In New Paltz, which is New Paltz, New York, which is where Floyd Patterson had a gym up in New York.
Right, yep.
So I was surprised to see that as well. But how did he fare in the title bout game?
Of course, he's a badass, so he's going to do very well. Even though today's current, the top guy at featherweight, we have 2 guys who are tried and true against each other, actually. You got Leo Santa Cruz and Carl Frampton right now. I would say Leo Santa Cruz is on top. The first time they fight, Attell wins, unanimous decision, pretty lopsided. One judge gave Santa Cruz 1 round. One judge gave him 3. That was the best. So the scores were 118, 110, 117, 111, and 119, 109, all for Attell. When they fight 100 times, Abe Attell dominates. 94 victories, 4 defeats, and 2 draws, 24 wins by knockout.
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, the guy, he fought everybody, Alex, everybody.
Absolutely. And he had one of those styles that is going to be difficult. I don't know. I think that's the thing about it. As much as I tend to like punchers, You got to think it's the stylists that are the ones that would probably do well in any era. Well, because the thing that they are good at is slowing things down and complicating things and giving you a puzzle to figure out.
Right. They adapt to what you're giving them, and they slowly turn it into what they want. But the interesting thing about the title bout game and Leo Santa Cruz, I like Leo Santa Cruz. I like his style and everything else. But he's tall for the division. And Abatel was not. Abatel was 5'4". Even I'm taller than him. Even Sal's taller than him. So it was interesting. But you got to give credit where credit's due. Abatel, he had 72 wins, 39 coming by knockout. He did lose 9 times, only 9 in 99 bouts that were recorded, at least on BoxRec. As Alex told you, there were several others that are not included. And of those 9 losses, he was stopped 4 times. He had 16 draws on record. He fought 1,023 rounds, which, I mean, today's fighters don't come close to that, obviously, but their careers don't last as long either. But Abatel, former world featherweight champion, he died, as Alex said, at 86 years old in February of 1970, was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 1990. Abatel is our blast from the past this week. Alex, great job, and your knowledge of Abatel surpasses most. And you know what? I just want to say this. I think that Bert Sugar is one of the most knowledgeable guys in the sport. And that book, that's like when we do this segment, especially with guys that are known at least to Bert Sugar. What he writes about them is a summary of their careers like no other has been able to put together. I was glad that I met Bert Sugar on several times, but we had a lot of fun one time at Madison Square Garden together, and the guy knew his stuff, man. And I think boxing lost a gem when he passed.
Oh, they absolutely did, it is. Maybe it's not the best book, maybe it's not the most scholarly, but it's certainly a very entertaining read. It's a must-have for every boxing fan, especially casual fans, because if you have interest in this sport, that's the great way to get in deeper. It's a good sort of gateway drug for boxing fans. His writing's very engaging and very fun. Almost every one of those things that he'll make you laugh at some point in the thing. He's just a colorful, fun guy, and yeah, he is missed.
He made me laugh a lot, many times. But anyway, Alex, great job as usual, and we'll look forward to you later in the week, hopefully, so you can give us your thoughts on Chocolito's return.
Oh yeah, that's this weekend. Looking forward to a great fight card with Chocolatito and Sis Raquette. Sorung Visai. Love saying that name.
Whatever. I'm like Larry. I can't. And with that guy, I can't even say his first name. So it's just like, yeah, it's his opponent. It's his opponent. Chocolito's opponent. Roman Gonzalez. I can say, yeah. Alex, great job. We'll talk to you soon, my friend.
All right, take care, Billy C.
That's Alex Papali. You can catch him on Wednesdays and then some, because he'll be back. He'll be back later in the week, and I'll be back in 2.
Billy C will be right back. Part of the Billy C Boxing Network.
This is important news for women using birth control medications and devices. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with a pseudotumor after using one of these birth control drugs or devices, you may be eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Contact the law firm of Davis & Crump now. If you or a loved one have used one of these birth control medications, you are eligible for cash award and expenses. Call. Operators are standing by.
If you're over the age of 50 and considering buying an annuity in the next 60 days, I have some important news for you. Don't buy an annuity until you understand the pros and cons of annuities. A free book to help you maximize your retirement income from television host and three-time author Josh Melberg has been released. This book reveals little-known truths about annuity strategies in simple-to-understand terms. Grab a pen right now because we are about to offer you this free book that unlocks the 5 little-known secrets we believe baby boomers and seniors should know before buying an annuity. Call 800-493-9652 now, and you'll receive a free copy of Josh Melberg's book, Next Gen Annuity Strategies Revealed. As a bonus, we'll also send you the #1 mistakes retirees are making with their investments today, and a free DVD on how you can get up to 33% more income in retirement. Call 800-493-9652 to have your free information kit rushed to your door. Again, that's 800-493-9652.
If you or a loved one have had hernia repair surgery with mesh reinforcement and suffered infection, chronic pain, mesh migration, mesh failure, organ damage, or needed additional surgery, call the Rely On Group right now. You may be eligible to receive a cash award and compensation for your medical expenses. Your voice deserves to be heard. Call the Rely On Group to be connected with a personal injury attorney for a free consultation. Call 800-715-4869. That's 800-715-4869. Listen to this important message. If you owe money to the IRS, you will want to hear this. Penalties and interest compound daily on your back taxes, putting you under a mountain of debt. Tax 10,000 has years of experience connecting people with tax resolution specialists. Working through the IRS Fresh Start program, they will handle all the necessary forms, and if you qualify, you may end up saving thousands of dollars. Call Tax 10,000 at 800-773-4604.
This is important news for women using birth control medications and devices. If you or a loved one have been diagnosed with a pseudotumor after using one of these birth control drugs or devices, you may be eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Contact the law firm of Davis & Crump right now if you or a loved one have used one of these birth control medications or devices and were diagnosed with a pseudotumor to see if you are eligible for a cash award and medical expenses. Call now. Operators are standing by.
If you're over the age of 50 and considering buying an annuity in the next 60 days, I have some important news for you. Don't buy an annuity until you understand the pros and cons of annuities. A free book to help you maximize your retirement income from television host and three-time author Josh Melberg has been released. This book reveals little-known truths about annuity strategies in simple-to-understand terms. Grab a pen right now because we are about to...
Check out BillyCBoxing.com now, or feel the wrath of the mighty mustache.
Oh, that hurts! Why are you doing that to my face? I hate you!
That's BillyCBoxing.com. Consider this your warning.
Now back to Billy C. Interact with the show at BillyCBoxing.com.
And we're back. You're listening and watching the Billy C. Show. Glad you could be with us. And speaking of being with us, joining us again, the one, the only, Sal Rocky Senecola. And Sal, you know, we were talking about a bunch of stuff before, but one of the things with the belts and, you know, the significance of a belt and them stripping a guy and blah, blah, blah. Well, here's a situation where the IBF had warned Terrence Crawford after he unified the belts. First time we had all 4 sanctioning bodies unified for over a decade. And, you know, Terrence Crawford beat another 2-belt holder to win all 4. And then before you know it, the IBF is threatening Terrence Crawford that he must fight Sergey Lipinets next. Sergey Lipinets, no disrespect to him, but 12-0 with 10 knockouts. Terrence Crawford is way beyond that. So rather than get stripped, Terrence Crawford vacated the title. And now the IBF has put up at least their number 3 against their number 4, Sergey Lipinets, who's 12-0, 10 knockouts, going up against Kirill Kondo, who's 29-6-1. This was my point when we left you last. You know, wouldn't it have been advantageous for the IBF to kind of, you know, work with Terrence Crawford and his team to let him fight their mandatory guy and then still at the same time have the value of a name like Terrence Crawford holding their belts rather than take this route, which, let's be honest, this isn't a huge draw. I mean, it is a money sanctioning fee for them, but what's your thoughts?
Well, it's a odd situation because you have maybe not even arguably one of the best fighters in that weight class that you can ever see right now, and that's Terrence Crawford. And as he has been recognized as the sole champion, for a sanctioning body to strip him of his title or take the belt away from him and to try and match it together with the number 3, number 4, I don't know. It doesn't leave me feeling that the credibility of the IBF, even though they're one of my favorites, they were the last one, the next one to come up after WBA, WBC. The IBF was surely credible. I feel torn about it because I understand what we're talking about, the mandatories, but yes, not to contradict what you should do and how you should do it, but there's the old but. Maybe to get in line as a next opponent or as a next mandatory after this mandatory is fulfilled is maybe something that they have to try and do to, reward the fighters, but also to keep their credibility instead of just stripping it away. Bill, it's a debatable topic.
Yeah, but
you talk about it.
You contradict yourself. Because,
that's what I'm saying.
Not only
it's a hard line thing. I'm looking at it from both sides. It's a debatable topic.
Well, the bottom line is, your thoughts, because the truth of the matter is this. At least we both agree that there's too many effing belts to begin with, right? So we agree on that. And then, we also know that the sanctioning bodies are in place because of the greed factor, et cetera. So we agree on that. Then, we also agree that there should be one champion. We agree on that. And then what I disagree with you on is, you want to wear the IBF belt, well, then you got a mandatory. And it's easy to assume that mandatory position, the fighter that we're talking about, Fighter X, earned that spot, right? But even that is under discussion. We see many, many times that number 5, the old line, the next highest ranked fighter in our division, in our sanctioning body that's available gets the thing. So it's like a scam. Listen, there's no doubt, Sal. There's no doubt. They could all play nice. And I do agree that, for the most part, if a sanctioning body says, hey, you got to fight within 6 months or 8 months or 9 months, whatever their rule is, for a fighter that might have all 4 belts, and if he's going sequentially, I got to defend this, I got to do this one, I got this mandatory, I got that mandatory, it may exceed that limit. But I still think, Sal, that it's more advantageous for that sanctioning body to ride that wave rather than throw a fight like this. And I'm not disrespecting Kondu or Lipinets, but if you want to get your title out there and you want to get the recognition, you got to snuzzle up to a guy that people know about. I mean, the majority of people don't know either one of these guys.
Well, you're so true. And they do realize in that weight class that Terrence Crawford is the very best. There's nobody in that weight class that's going to touch him. And that's why he is the undisputed champion. I think it's time that somebody or some of these champions that have these belts, could make a stand too. I mean, it's a bold one, but say, hey, I'm going to align myself with the most credible sanctioning body, and that's the only one I'm going to respect.
Well, they do
and that's
that.
The only one I'm going to do.
Some of them do that, and even promoters have the deals with them, which equals BS.
BS and money on the side.
Listen, exactly. Listen, you know what a good compromise for all of this would be? If the fighters fought more frequently.
Well,
I mean, come on, right? If they fought more frequently, if we don't, I mean, let's face it, we give a fighter the Fighter of the Year award if he fights 4 times in 1 year. Oh my God, 4 times, 4 times. The guy fought 4 times. How did he do it? I mean, it's crazy. These guys aren't fighting that much. They're fighting 2-3 times a year at the most. So I don't know. Listen, they're big value. Floyd Mayweather will tell you, you got to create value in your name, in your brand, or whatever, right? That's the name of the game. And these sanctioning bodies, because of greed, all they care, and Larry hit it on the head, they don't care. That's the bottom line. They don't care.
They don't. Blanket statement across the board.
They just want their sanctioning fee. And the truth of the matter is that they're actually devaluing their own belt because, when you have a fighter that most people know who they are and he's got the belt, they refer to him as the world champion. Case in point, Anthony Joshua, and even Deontay Wilder for that matter. I mean, and to suggest that and Larry alluded to it, WBC is making another belt, which we're going to talk about tomorrow for this fight, coming up with Triple G and Canelo. But one thing I want to mention real quick is that the other heavyweight champion, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. You got people know that Anthony Joshua is a world heavyweight champion. We know that because he beat Klitschko. That's how most people know. But what maybe people don't know is that he's the IBF champion and currently the WBA champion. Now, Deontay Wilder, he's the other champion of the 4 major sanctioning bodies. He has the WBC belt. And then the fourth guy, or the third guy, to equal the 4 top belts, is Joseph Parker. Many people might not even know who Joseph Parker is because he hasn't really fought anybody, and he's making a title defense against Hughie Fury, who in my opinion has no business fighting in a world title fight. But here's a very big thing, Sal. They are offering it on YouTube as a pay-per-view. And it's going to be about, I guess, maybe $10 to watch this. And their goal here is they're trying to compare it to a $100 price tag for U.S. fighters. Now, this fight right now is only offered in the UK and in Ireland, but the thing could this be the future of pay-per-views?
Well, I think they're gonna break the seal there and open up the floodgates, and we'll see. Hey, they devalue belts, they could devalue pay-per-views and make them available across the board for less money. Why not? It's not the wide world of sports. It's the wild world of sports. I don't know. It's interesting.
Streaming is definitely the future.
It is. You guys told me that a couple of years ago, and I said, streaming what? I see a plane stream across the sky.
For all intent purposes, the signals are being transmitted the same way right now. And it's just a definition. People think of streaming as on a handheld or on a computer, which is true. But trust me, it's not going to be long before everything is like that. But anyway, listen, tomorrow we got a lot of stuff we're going to be doing. Over the next few weeks, we are going to be introducing our newest segment. And Sal, I'm excited about this. We are going to be doing a new segment, and it's going to be based on fights that never were. Big fights that all the fans demanded but never took place. For example, Lennox Lewis against Riddick Bowe, or even Mike Tyson against George Foreman. Fights like that. And Sal and myself and Dax Khan and Alex Perpali are all going to be on at the same time. And we're going to give you the reasons why the fight was in demand, some of the reasons why it didn't happen. We're going to give you our breakdowns and predictions of the fight as if it was going to happen. And then, as a little twist, thanks to Alex Perpali and his computer machine, the boxing machine that Sal likes to call it. However, it's simply the Title Bout Championship computer game. We'll punch in that fight and give us a round-by-round description of what's going on. and then we'll talk about it post-fight. So we're real excited about that. Look for that to start this month. We got some guests lined up for this month. Busy month of September. But let's kick it off with this. Make sure you tune in tomorrow morning. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, ciao, baby.